Jacobean Poetry. Samuel Daniel. Samuel Daniel, an English poet, playwright, and historian, was a literary innovator during the late Elizabethan and early Jacobean periods. His influential works spanned various genres, including the sonnet cycle Delia, the epic poem The Civil Wars between the Houses of Lancaster and York, the verse dialogue Bucephalus, and the essay on English poetry, A Defense of Rhyme. Renowned as one of the foremost authors of his era, Daniel's impact resonated with contemporaries like William Shakespeare. His writings continue to inspire writers for centuries, notably the Romantic poets Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth, with C.S. Lewis hailing him as the most interesting man of letters of the 16th century in England. Samuel Daniel's Delia. Daniel's literary journey commenced in 1591 when some of his Delia sonnets were included without authorization in Sir Philip Sidney's Astrophel and Stella. Sidney's sister, Mary Sidney, objected to this publication. In 1592, Daniel released the authorized edition of his works featuring the sonnet cycle Delia and the historical poem The Complaint of Rosamond. He dedicated Delia to Mary Sidney, seeking her forgiveness for the unauthorized inclusion in her brother's edition, attributing it to the indiscretions of a greedy printer. Daniel was later invited to join the Pembroke household, possibly as a tutor to a young William Herbert. He also became part of the Wilton Circle, a group of writers associated with Mary Sidney, including Edmund Spenser, Michael Drayton, Sir John Davies, and Abraham Franz. A Defense of Rhyme. This prose treatise defends English verse's deviation from classical norms, responding to Thomas Campion's Observations in the Art of English Poesy, published 1602. Michael Drayton. Michael Drayton was an English poet known for his intricate and baroque style during the Elizabethan era. While once well received, his poetry is now considered among the most cryptic in English literature. However, Drayton is recognized for his technical mastery and pioneering literary techniques that influenced later generations. Drayton was the first English poet to write odes in emulation of Horace, a practice that later became a distinct genre. His efforts contributed significantly to Horace's popularity in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. Drayton also favored the use of heroic couplets, a style that would be adopted by major 18th century English poets like John Dryden and Alexander Pope, who frequently employed this form. Although Drayton's style may not be in vogue today, he holds a crucial place as a transitional poet bridging the Elizabethan and Jacobean eras. During his early years, Drayton served Sir Henry Goodare, whose education he credited for his learning. In his poems, Drayton celebrated Anne Goodare as Idea. His initial published work, The Harmony of the Church, published 1591, contained biblical paraphrases in an archaic style. Subsequent works aligned more with contemporary trends. Pastoral in Idea and the Shepherd's Garland, Sonnet in Idea's Mirror, Romantic Idyll in Endymion and Phoebe, and historical epic in Robert Duke of Normandy and Mortemeriados. Sir John Davies. Born in Wiltshire, Sir John Davies was educated at Winchester College and Queen's College, Oxford, though his graduation is disputed. He joined the Middle Temple in 1588, studying under John Donne, and was called to the bar in 1595. Besides his legal pursuits, he wrote poetry, notably Orchestra or a Poem of Dancing, published in 1596. Davies's poetic works encompass a series of epigrams detailing his youthful escapades, Noche Tapestry, based on the ideas of the immortality of the soul and self-knowledge, and Hymns of Astrea in acrostic verse, a series of acrostic poems in tribute to Queen Elizabeth or Elisabetha Regina. He contributed poetic dialogues to Francis Davison's Poetical Rhapsody, published in 1602, and his collected poems were published in 1622. He possibly accompanied King James to Scotland after Queen Elizabeth's death in 1603, receiving a knighthood and becoming Solicitor General for Ireland. Davies promoted legal reform, aiming for a civil society benefiting England. He supported pro-English property laws and the expulsion of Catholic priests to reinforce Protestantism. He was appointed Speaker in the Irish Parliament in 1613 and returned to England participating in the Parliament of 1621. Appointed Lord Chief Justice in 1626 by Charles I, he died before assuming office. John Donne delivered his funeral oration and he was buried in St. Martin in the Fields. Aemilia Lanyer. Aemilia Lanyer was a pioneering English poet known as the first woman to assert herself as a professional poet through her volume Salve Deus Rex Judeorum. Some attempts have linked her to Shakespeare's Dark Lady. In 1611, at age 42, Lanyer published Salve Deus Rex Judeorum, a remarkable collection of poetry. It was a rarity for an English woman to publish and seek patronage for her work. She was the fourth woman in the British Isles to publish poetry and the first to produce a substantial volume of original poetry. Lanyer's book is a potential precursor of feminist literature, featuring dedications to women and a woman's perspective on the crucifixion in the title poem. Salve Deus Rex Judeorum is a significant literary work offering insights into female virtue, piety, and an idealized world. Her efforts helped pave the way for women's engagement in the literary sphere. Aemilia Lanyer's book set notable precedents. Its concluding poem, The Description of Cookham, is the earliest recorded English country house poem. The volume comprises 9 dedications, both in verse and prose, all exclusively to influential women. This makes it the first English publication by and for women. One dedication, the author's dream to the Lady Mary, the Countess Dowager of Pembroke, praises Mary Sidney, marking the earliest surviving poem by a female writer lauding another woman's literary achievements. The title poem retells Christ's passion, a familiar theme. However, Lanyer adopts a gender-focused approach, portraying men around Jesus as flawed and women as insightful, compassionate, and devoted. She even defends Eve's role in Christ's crucifixion by offsetting male culpability with women's guilt for original sin. This stance advocates for an end to female subordination and gender equality. Lanyer's work addresses religious authority, devotional poetry, and scriptural interpretation. It navigates gender, religion, race, nationality, class, and desire to forge a public voice. Initially, her book had limited impact. Only one edition was published during her lifetime. She was largely forgotten until the 20th century when she, along with other neglected female writers, was rediscovered and embraced by literary history. While research on Lanyer gained momentum in the 1970s, her legacy continues to be explored and appreciated. Phineas and Giles Fletcher. Phineas Fletcher was an English poet renowned for his work The Purple Island or the Isle of Man, a blend of religion and science. He was educated at Eton and King's College, Cambridge. His pastoral drama Cyclades, a Piscatary, was written in 1615 for James I's performance at King's College, but was staged after the king's departure, published in 1631. Fletcher became chaplain to Sir Henry Willoughby and held the rectory of Hillgate, Norfolk from 1621. Fletcher authored Locustae vel Pietas Jesuitica, attacking the Jesuits, a Roman Catholic order of religious men, in parallel Latin and English poems. His erotic poem, Britain's Ida, published 1628, misattributed to Spenser, is considered his work as proven in his manuscript. The Purple Island, published 1633, was his major work, including Piscatary Eclogues. He authored the 2 theological proses, The Way to Blessedness and Joy in Tribulation. Giles Fletcher is an English clergyman and poet, known for Christ's Victory and Triumph, published in 1610. His major work, Christ's Victory and Triumph, is a 4-canto allegorical poem. The first canto portrays a heavenly dispute between justice and mercy using Christ's life. The second deals with an allegorical temptation account. The third covers Christ's passion, and the fourth addresses the resurrection and ascension, concluding with a tribute to his brother Phineas. The poem employs an 8-line stanza similar to Spenser's style. Milton drew inspiration from Christ's victory and triumph for his Paradise Regained. Elizabeth Cary. Elizabeth Cary, Viscountess Falkland, excelled as an English poet, dramatist, translator, and historian. She holds the distinction of being the first woman known to have penned and published an original play in English, The Tragedy of Mariam. Acknowledged as a skilled scholar from an early age, she manifested a strong dedication to poetry that resonated through her plays. Foremost in her poetic endeavors, Cary considered poetry the pinnacle of literary expression. Although several of her poems are lost, her commitment to poetry remains evident in all her dramatic works. The Tragedy of Mariam, the Fair Queen of Jewry, published 1613, possibly her first or second play, utilized iambic pentameters and couplets with interwoven irony. This play features numerous sonnets embodying traditional elements. A significant stride, it became the first original English play authored by a woman and subsequently published. Cary's subsequent work, The History of the Life, Reign, and Death of Edward II, presented a political allegory based on historical events. Published long after her demise in 1680, it draws parallels between King Edward II's story and the reign of King Charles. Reflecting the power struggles of the 1620s, Cary's interactions with the Duke of Buckingham's family influenced the work. The play delves into favoritism's perilous consequences, mirroring her own reliance on Buckingham's circle. While much of her original content, including poetry, is lost, Elizabeth Cary's impact on literature endures, particularly through her pioneering achievements in drama. Lady Mary Wroth. Lady Mary Wroth achieved notable literary feats. She crafted the first complete English sonnet sequence, Pamphylia to Amphilanthus, and penned the initial romantic prose, The Countess of Montgomery's Urania. Her life and writing were unconventional, challenging the patriarchal norms of the English Renaissance. Born into the renowned Sidney family in 1587, her father, Sir Robert Sidney, and uncle, Sir Philip Sidney, were esteemed poets and statesmen. Her aunt, Mary Sidney Herbert, was a patron of the arts and a writer in a male-dominated era. Lady Wroth dared to voice her feminine perspective, often opposing the dominant culture. Her creative spirit, not just her literary lineage, drove her expression. In an age of restrictive gender roles, she navigated her beliefs through her art, marking her as a trailblazer. As a poet, Wroth defied traditional gender roles within the sonnet sequence genre. She replaced the typical Petrarchan lover pursuing a distant, disinterested woman, with a female protagonist grappling with her emotions and the absence of a beloved in Pamphylia to Amphilanthus. Interestingly, it is believed that her cousin, William Herbert, the third Earl of Pembroke, and a renowned arts patron, inspired the role of Amphilanthus. This relationship led to rumors, yet her husband, Sir Robert Wroth, seemingly either remained unaware or unperturbed, referring to her as a dear and loving wife, and naming Pembroke as an executor of his will. After Sir Robert Wroth's death in 1614, Mary Wroth faced substantial debts, forcing her to withdraw from the court's lavish expenses. Vicious rumors further tarnished her reputation and led to her falling out of favor with Queen Anne. She sought refuge in Pembroke's London residence. Following her estrangement from the court, Wroth turned to writing, creating Urania, a pastoral romance containing veiled references to court figures. This work, accompanied by the sonnet sequence Pamphylia to Amphilanthus, was dedicated to her friend and literary patron Susan Herbert, Countess of Montgomery, the sister-in-law of William Herbert, Earl of Pembroke. Sir Edward Denny, a reader of Urania, mistakenly interpreted it as an account of his own infidelities, leading to its removal from circulation after his complaints to the king. The controversy did not halt Wroth's writing career. In the mid 1620s, she produced a pastoral tragicomedy, Love's Victory. Wroth spent her later years in seclusion and passed away in 1653 at the age of 66.